I love watching the footage back, like last year's. Oh my god, they were the funniest thing ever. Yes.
Yeah, we watched some of ours back like before TOC to help us with like
Oh, yeah.
stuff, and I was like, I genuinely can't get through like it's so bad. Like it's so embarrassing.
Oh, that's me. Ew.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
like
video's
sometimes when
so
I'm in class and I'm
delayed.
bored, I'm like, oh, the TS or the round robin videos are still live streamed. Let me go watch them and give myself a good laugh. That's such a at camps. Oh, maybe that's possible. That looks good. Okay, so what you're gonna do, just keep it running for now. Make sure your computer's muted. Let's turn that video on.
Okay, is this here?
As long as, yeah, okay, that's where the speakers are gonna speak. It's labeled. Oh, we're gonna hyperlink this to this. Oh shoot, I should probably get to mine. Okay. Okay. Hello. Okay, you should be good. If anything goes wrong, which it shouldn't, but
Okay, thank you so much, Faisal.
yeah, so you just leave it on.
Okay.
Like, doesn't die in the middle. Oh, hey, happy.
Late.
Yeah, these are really jank. Okay, this keeps turning off. Wait, that's really weird. That's just like not the same camera. This wire is a little faulty, so I wouldn't touch it too much.
Just like not gonna touch the computer.
Okay, that should be good. If anything goes wrong, just start it.
Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Oh my god, I'm an idiot. I didn't even. My name's Liza. It's nice to meet you.
I
think I saw you last year too.
Yeah, I remember DMing you after, so I was like, we get invited back next year. You're like,
Oh my gosh, yes, I remember
I was so
that.
excited.
Yeah. Well, look at y'all.
Yeah.
Again, I believe in y'all.
Hopefully.
And then y'all did it back to back.
That'd be great.
And then everybody.
Yeah.
Y'all did
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's Do you know where judges usually sit? Is this where debaters usually sit also?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know where like the judges usually sit. Like a lot of them like sit closer to like the front of the classroom, but like it's whatever. Like the debaters like usually sit at
you
the
know
front.
what yeah, I'm just confused on if you want us to move right
I'm going to do this.
Perfect.
Well, where can I put
on. Better than Hi, sorry, no, you're so good. I thought it like not sure you do it, I just was dressing. I don't think about.
Okay, do you think we got like the
You
outfits
did.
right?
No,
Okay,
you guys are
okay.
so good. Yeah, totally.
I was so nervous because I was talking to Keel the night before.
Uh-huh.
I had like a 3-piece suit packed and then he wears like sweatpants and stuff.
Yeah. I don't even really wear like sweatpants or anything because I feel like I fall asleep and I can't like because I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna home. But yeah, like
Yeah.
I was so
Very
mad.
good.
Yeah.
I don't know if we had one where
Interesting, because
I
everyone's
went to like get.
Oh, I don't know. I had help. I actually had a lot of help.
Oh,
They were like not explaining. It was
Are you
Jacob,
live
like
streaming?
Jacob, yeah. It's on
then you should mute it,
like my computer.
No.
Oh, the Zoom.
and then unmute.
There's something about like the
path has been laid for lasting peace, as Akbar 24 explains that the Horn of Africa has witnessed significant development with de-escalating, reducing immediate threat of conflict. While the agreement represents a diplomatic breakthrough, Somaliland remains a critical issue. Complexities demand sustained cooperation. Unresolved issues underscore fragility of peace. The path forward hinges on sustained dialogue. The AU sets precedent for international recognition. As Sports 21 writes, the AU led the process to resolve Somaliland's status and its legitimacy to act authoritatively. The international community, besides considering their own interests, countries look to the AU. If accepted, Somaliland would probably be allowed to join the UN. The act sparked civil war, clan dynamics, ensure conflict, minority factions with large support, reject independence, and formidable movements. As Batten 22 explains, there's strong opposition by many Somalilanders against its recognition. A power struggle between clans, and clans oppose recognition because they know it will translate to aid and government controlled by the ISAC. The fear is that aid will allow the ISAC to dominate other clans, increasing anxieties, and clans openly discussing the war. All it takes is a few people to lead civil war. Independently, affirming brings FBI, which causes inequality-driven conflict based on corruption. As Stage 23 explains, that Somaliland has limited financial aid due to lack of recognition. In Somaliland, FBI increases inequality and triggers conflicts benefiting only a small number of people. Conflicts arise due to increasing inequality between poor and elite. The inequalities affect the same people. It's easier for them to fight back. The impact is both war and instability. Somaliland's civil war causes mass displacement and death and draws from great powers. As 23 explains, the fighting between Somaliland clans threatens the broader region. Thousands are displaced, drawing in forces from Puntland and Al-Shabaab takes full advantage of instability. Global and regional powers battle for the Horn's resources and erode stability in the region. Condition 2 is terror. Terrorism in Somalia is on the decline, reaching all-time lows. As Keegan November writes, there's been a decline in Al-Shabaab linked to cooperation between security forces. There's been a significant improvement in deterrence and disruption of attacks. A 60% reduction in propaganda has decreased. Current mediation ensures Ethiopian troops and AU peacekeeping remains in Somalia. The deal is contingent on not recognizing Somaliland. As Solu in December explained that Somalia and Ethiopia reached an agreement that addressed demands of both. Somalia secured recognition for its territorial unity. Somalia confirmed that Ethiopian troops remain. Al-Shabaab resistance is only working because of outside help, funding, and divided military and low morale. Williams 24 explains that he played a vital role against Al-Shabaab, remaining dependent on external assistance. The army requires more funding than the government can afford alone. Somalia's bickering leaders failed to clarify structures between the government and countries and member states. Al-Shabaab's forces cohesive, and Al-Shabaab maintained higher levels of confidence. The after disrupted forces in anger, Somalia gets sidetracked by tensions with African states. As Phillips 24 writes, the Ethiopians recognized Somaliland as Somalian authorities threatened to expel Ethiopian troops helping to fight Al-Shabaab. Its quarrel allowed Al-Shabaab to regain territory. Ethiopian and AU relations with Somalia were key to stability and counter-terror operations, backsliding piracy, war, and starvation. As COP24 explains, this strained relations with Ethiopia undermined AU's peacekeeping, of which Ethiopia is a main contributor. Somalia calls for Ethiopia to lead the AU. Not endorse a plan that antagonize Ethiopia, resulting in security vacuum, creates conditions for Al-Shabaab to conquer and destabilize state governments, enters Somali friction in the final row, fragmenting action which Al-Shabaab is set to exploit, creating chaos for pirate groups to exploit, and affirming British recruitment and peer proof. As Williams 24 explains, the Al-Shabaab launched a recruitment campaign, drawing on anger of the enemy way. The MOU and Ethiopia's willingness to recognize Somaliland. Al-Shabaab caused Somalis to stop Ethiopian interference. The impact of instability. Al-Shabaab causes mass instability, escalation of conflict, and expanded operations in Uganda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and increases the risk of other terrorist rises. As Al-Qaeda 24 explains, the war on terrorism is far from over. Al-Shabaab aims to extend operations beyond Somalia to destabilize the region. It's natural for terrorist organizations to think about geographical area that would be easier to terrorize and control. African instability goes nuclear. Multiple actors with vested interests in hotspots. As Finnegan 20 continues, the African conflicts and tensions are threatening to flare up into nuclear war. Leaders ended arms control, low barriers to nuclear war. Terrorism seizes instability across Africa. In the northeastern corner, a hotspot with violence terrorizing millions. African violence spills over and threatens to suck in the whole region, devolving into war and imperiling U.S. interests in the Red Sea and Europe. For those reasons, we're probably it's still never for me. Do you think that would be just like forward? Yeah. So it sounds good. I mean, I said I was thinking I sat and then I oh wait. Okay, sorry, got that. I did send out the show. So I'm gonna get back. Is anybody not ready? Awesome. Reaffirm, potential is terror, groups are estimated to use this as Section 24 binds. The ability of the U.S. to preserve states transit has ceded territory in initiative to include these. U.S. will not recognize Somaliland for the AU. Short 21, numerous downsides of U.S. recognition. China's hostility towards Somaliland, the Somalias are the U.S. There's a force that would achieve for the U.S. all the benefits without downsides. AU the process to resolve Somaliland status. That's why Grammar in 22. U.S. had no plans to recognize Somaliland's independence. That would be like the AU recognizing Puerto Rico for the U.S. U.S. bases can defend against terrorism without recognition. Web 24. If tensions are managed poorly, conflict could spread. Somaliland could help the U.S. gain a footing to protect vital maritime routes. However, since Somaliland remains unrecognized, the U.S. would need first to get Somalia's approval. U.S. military presence relieves congestion and increased reaction time. Ribbon 24. Would the attack on shipping continue? Iranian harassment of shipping ended only when the U.S. responded militarily. Sustainment replenishment is difficult. Congestion and limit that towards utility. The intelligence community sees Somaliland as a stable base. The U.S. should recognize Somaliland as a bearer base. Air patrol would be a permanent solution. Further escalation risk of the U.S. Iran war. There's 55 vibes. Trump administration may be planning to escalate. Trump will not stand for having U.S. Navy ships attacked every day by the Houthis using Iranian missiles. Iran will get hit directly. U.S. will go nuclear as Al-Farasi and Intel 19 times. The sanction regime is likely to force Iran to take an action and require U.S. military response and immunity for strike would minimize risk to its forces in the region, grant the U.S. significant leverage in negotiations. This would draw on other actors and guarantee our extinction April 20. Large-scale war in the Middle East, Russia and China might be drawn in. Nuclear weapons would be used by accident or miscount, making the world uninhabitable. Contention to is regional stability. Conflict is imminent in the Horn of Africa, Elmo 125. The Horn of Africa remains one of the most turbulent regions. Escalating conflicts are rooted in instability, enduring tension between Egypt and Ethiopia, Somalia, and Eritrea. Tensions are likely to escalate. Additionally, Turkish mediation fails. Type 54. The Ankara declaration could cause political backlash against Somalia. The agreement could lead to future tensions as it does not address Ethiopia's ambitions. Ethiopia has insisted privately that it will not withdraw from the Somaliland deal. Regional stability is created in two ways. A is preventing escalation. Somaliland proceeds to act like a state as Baragama Coalition 24 5. Somaliland has unilaterally struck major port deals with foreign powers, raising tensions with Somalia and the broader Horn of Africa. The new Somaliland president will continue this trend as the Horn Daily News 24 finds Abdullahi's victory has reinvigorated Somaliland's long-standing quest for recognition, as in SG24 confirms. Abdullahi assumed that his government had the right to negotiate agreements, and if the deal included recognition of some positive developments. Somaliland's attempt to legitimize itself inflict tensions absent recognition of the 24. In an attempt to securitize itself, which is a privileged statehood, Somaliland is capable of doing so without making Somalia antagonized and concerned from other African states. The MOU would not have inflamed tensions in the affirmative world. Alluding 24 finds the AU reluctant to grant Somaliland sovereignty, even though it's a recurring cause of instability in East Africa. The Red Sea Port Deal would not have exacerbated tensions if Somaliland sovereignty was recognized. B is AU legitimacy, which the act solves in 3 ways. The first is correcting inaction. As in for Levy, Somaliland lack of recognition drives tensions. The AU is seen as ineffective now because of its inaction. Figure 24. The AU is dysfunctional. Members have little trust in the AU. More hands-on leadership would be desirable. Secondly, creating consistency. The AU brings precedent by not recognizing Somaliland in 24. The AU concluded Somaliland satisfied the requirements for statehood. However, the AU has taken no steps to act on these findings, undermining its credibility. Eritrea and South Sudan show that the AU has supported the redefinition of borders. Recognition would align with the AU's principles and promote stability in a volatile region. Thirdly, replacing destructive mediators. Member 24. The involvement of Russia and Turkey complicates the situation. The potential for disruptive actions by adventurers highlights the reduced agency of African nations. Somaliland indicates that escalating pressure on African institutions to align with specific blocks. Given fragmentation in the AU, member states approach to partnerships with extra-continental actors. The unified stance is crucial. The AU could resolve regional conflicts across A13. The AU is an important intermediary regarding conflict resolution. Regional action is more partial, more aware of local customs. The impacts conflict. The African Center for International Affairs finds instability in the region a concern for global hegemons. The commercial need for protecting trade routes. The Horn is an interconnected complex and military bases. The African Center for International Affairs continues to grow. Tension may lead into a global conflict. And a great power war would lead to a nuclear war, as Claire 21 finds. Great power war poses extinction. Weapons kill everyone. This would lead to human extinction, as Star 14 finds. Small nuclear war would disrupt global climate and destruct ozone. Nuclear weapons would destroy the human race. Thus, we proudly affirm the resolution. And then you're in your response. Okay.
All right, let's start that. Now, on your C1, how do we link into the US-Iran war?
Because right now Trump sees the escalating Houthi attacks as a reason to strike Iran because Iran is sponsoring the Houthi attacks, meaning that in the affirmative world, when the United States has on their mind that they currently have a base and they're fighting the Houthis, that pulls them away from the red button, or else in US-Iran conflict, the United States would nuclear escalate to get advantage in a location it's not like aware of or have knowledge of and leverage a negotiation.
So it's dependent on Trump.
Like it is specific to Trump, but we would say a US response generally would go like nuclear because they need that leverage. But I'll take a question.
Sounds good.
On your contention 1, does FDI like predominantly go to businesses?
We'd say it would go to the clan power, driving back.
to clarify though, it doesn't go to like a government, it goes to independent businesses, right?
Well, those businesses have to follow the laws of Somaliland, which is currently governed by one plan.
Wait, so what are the laws? Because I don't see why like.
I mean, like,
FDI
so you're
can't
just
go
saying
to
that, you're
businesses
just saying
that
that
aren't within
FBI
that
goes to
Islam grant.
businesses and businesses get to operate however they want.
No, the argument that I'm trying to understand is why can't FDI go to clans that aren't the ruling clan if FDI is supposed to go to independent businesses?
Because why would it go to the plan it's not open?
Because they could have a successful business. It's about innovation. It's about productivity. If
So
there's
you're saying that
success in a
opposing
business-
clans to own businesses don't have to follow anything from the clan that's currently in charge?
Well, that's what I want context on. Why can't they give it to other clans? What are
Because
the
we
rules
say
that
that
they're
laws
breaking?
and rules are established. I mean, I don't have a specific rule or laws to tell you right now, but I may. Okay, let's look at your C2 of terror. So like, who exactly is being recruited? Or who exactly would affirming to be recruited?
Sorry to clarify, are the C1 of terror?
Yes.
We're not necessarily talking about recruitment. We're just talking about like the Houthis escalating now, and a U.S. military base is the best thing to prevent a war from breaking out. So it's not like about recruitment; it's about deterrence.
Sounds good.
So let's talk about your C2 about terror. Would you say that the MOU increased terrorism?
I would say that at the point in which terrorism in Somalia is at an all-time low, like, it's not really relevant.
Wait,
to, like, today.
So how is it not relevant? Your link is that the MOU and Ethiopia's recognition of Somaliland should have increased terrorism through recruitment and a lack of cooperation. Did it decrease terrorism? Did it increase terrorism?
No, because right now it's at an all-time low.
Okay, so there's no historical precedent of recognition causing spikes in terror.
There is historical precedent of recognition spiking terror, but we say this argument is unique to Somaliland, not Ethiopia.
Wait, how does that apply? Because if you are telling me that terror is at an all-time low right now, and we had just seen,
Somaliland.
okay, so your impact is only about Somaliland.
I mean, we'd say that this is directly hurting Somaliland, which then extends out and that's across.
All right, I'm not gonna take any steps, I'll send the doc.
I won't have to.
Okay. All right, well, if anyone's not ready, let me know, please. I can start just down the. Let's talk about terror first. Realize that increased international interference against Houthis exacerbates the Yemeni humanitarian crisis. Pulesi 23 writes that tens of thousands of civilians have been killed, maimed, and displaced due to attacks made with Western military. A recent reduction in hostility levels and access to basic services, safety, and security remains out of reach for millions of people. The West has affected and will continue to affect a wide range of the fundamental human rights of the Yemeni people. Protection systems, independent investigative mechanisms, and political stability are urgently needed, not more missiles and aerial bombs. But second, it's not unique because Western reluctance to directly confront the Houthis leaves the threat to global security unresolved. As 1024 writes that Western powers do not intend to exceed the parameters they have set for themselves in terms of military activity against Houthi rebel strongholds. This serves the interests of the Houthi state sponsor and terrorist enabler, Iran, and ensures the continuation of the threat to international shipping. Insofar as they don't solve for that, there's absolutely no way you're seeing any solutions for the Houthis. But third, we would tell you that Somaliland defense doesn't solve anyways. This Houthi issues will persist as long as Iranian support continues. That's why Robinson writes just last year that Iran is the Houthis' primary benefactor, providing them with security assistance such as weapons, transfers, training, and intelligence support. In return for Iran's aid, the Houthis serve as an increasingly important part of Iran's axis of resistance, a network of state and non-state actors seeking to undermine Western influence in the Middle East. The Houthis assist Iran by menacing Saudi Arabia's border and protecting Iranian ships in the Red Sea, giving Iran room to evade sanctions on oil shipping, but turn it again because affirming positions al-Shabaab as defenders of Somalia and empowers terror, as Elmi in 24 writes, that a MOU with Somaliland and al-Shabaab is likely to take advantage of the situation of the defender of the nation to undermine the Somali government by creating instability, but turn it again because of maritime terror, as Zalran writes last year that the decision to recognize Somalia enabled al-Shabaab to recruit and expand operations beyond Somalia's borders. Coordination between al-Shabaab and the Houthis will only add fuel to the fire to engulf the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Let's talk about regional stability. The new president is less destabilizing in recognition efforts, as Valmary 24 writes, that New Year's deal is uncertain. The IRA said on campaign, the opposition will take a more cautious approach and will make a change as a former diplomat to look at recognition with less aggressive engagement in traditional channels. But also, we would say that there's no impact because Turkey succeeds in mediation means peace now and de-escalation is solving. As Aguiar writes last year in December, that Turkey resolved tensions between Ethiopia and Somalia. Talks culminated in a breakthrough and the agreement reduced the threat of conflict. We would say turn it because the act it deepens tension. The Snat on 18 writes that leaders in Mogadishu believe if Somaliland were to officially become a nation, it would further division within an already turbulent country. Somalia wouldn't want to let go owing to the strategic patch of land nearing the Red Sea. Fourth, turn it again because of increased internal stability. As Campaign 21 writes, the lack of international recognition has increased state nationality in Somaliland. Internal recognition in Somaliland is translated to legitimacy. Thus, in the eyes of Somaliland people, the de facto state is legitimate. Somaliland is an extraordinary success story. By comparing Somaliland to Somalia, we're able to identify that no international intervention has proven to be pivotal to Somaliland's success. The notion of self-reliance has fueled nationality and strengthened stability. Let's talk specifically about like AU legitimacy, though. The act destroyed the AU legitimacy, so turn is going back in October, right? That recognition would trigger diplomatic changes. This challenges a long-standing principle of consequences to extend beyond the Horn of Africa. But Africa has adopted a policy respecting borders drawn during colonial times enshrined in the AU Constitutive Act. This policy prevents disorder, chaos, and conflict in African countries that follow this principle. Fearing recognition sets dangerous precedents. But their evidence is also wrong. Somaliland isn't legally justified. Turns the absence recognition is legally bankrupt, which destroys AU credibility. As Hassan 21 writes, that the Montevideo Convention sets criteria for statehood. 1, a permanent population. 2, a defined territory. And 3rd, government. And 4th, capacity to enter into relation with other states. The enclave has no permanent population since it's nomadic, and it has no defined territory since it has no demarcated border. It has no capacity to enter relations as a renegade entity, and it fails to meet any requirements for a state. So at that point, there's absolutely no reason that affirming is going to increase AU credibility. I would say it's always going to see destruction of AU credibility since you're affirming a state that is not legally justified under that framework. At that point, it's a really easy whatever side of your ballot. Next.
Also not the doc now, but it's just gonna be frontlining and then down staircase. Let me know when everyone gets that.
All right, I got it.
All right, everyone ready? Awesome. Start on our first argument about terror. The first thing they tell you is that counterterror worsens the Yemen crisis. First, there's no implication to this. Second, we would say that nuclear war is much worse for the people in Yemen because they're literally dead. And third, their evidence says that these destructions are happening now. Then they said the U.S. won't confront them. Firstly, we would say it's within the terms they've already set out. Remember, we already have access to a port in Djibouti. It's just that it's not fast enough in terms of refueling. Second, they've conceded that Trump specifically wants to counter Iran and will do whatever it takes if he doesn't have a base. They said that Iran supports him no matter what. First of all, they've conceded our scenario isn't about actually stopping the Houthis. Trump just has to think we're taking enough action. He doesn't push the red button. Second, when we have a base close to the Houthis, we're able to strike them, meaning that they're no longer able to do attacks. Then their next two turns are basically just their second contention, but their evidence is talking about the MOU, which means that it's non-unique. Then go to regional stability. On the first argument about deals, first they say that they're being left escalatory. No, the very next line in their evidence says that the new president wants to do deals with the United States, even if he uses traditional channels. He uses those to do things that are escalatory. Then they say Turkey solved, but they don't engage with our Tyson evidence, which says Somalia doesn't like the terms Turkey said because they have to let Ethiopia use their port, which is very bad for them because Ethiopia is one of their main strategic rivals. So in the long run, tensions are increasing. Then they say that there will be tension with Somalia, but the AU will compel Somalia to negotiate. Schwartz 21 finds that Somalia would emerge stronger. Somaliland would assist Somalia with jurisdictional and security issues in Somaliland's eastern region. Ethiopia's ethnic Somali open region negotiate its own association. The African Union can compel Somalia to negotiate, which means that there's no escalation on the argument of internal stability. First, there's no implication to this. Second, we would say this proves our contention. One is wrong if they're saying that there is a unified nationality in Somaliland around wanting recognition, but third, we would say you can still have this national identity without with recognition. Then they on AU legitimacy. First, they say that it's colonial borders, but our argument is that colonial borders are what Somaliland itself is advocating for, and there's no reason why that this would cascade because Somaliland didn't go to war to get their independence, so it doesn't set a bad precedent. Then they said it's legally bad, but we would say that the population, even if they're nomadic, are nomadic within the borders of Somaliland that the government has already proposed, and the African Union in 2005 literally said they should recognize them, which means that our evidence is more specific to their lack of legitimacy, and the fact that they recognize Sudan and Eritrea means that they have historically been able to do this, and they've conceded that there's currently no AU legitimacy and credibility now, and that the affirmative solves through the action link. Go to their case. On civil war, first, chronicled by the Tyson evidence says that deals won't last because of its contingent on Somalia allowing Ethiopia to use their ports. But on plans, first, it's not unique. Escalation happens now. HO 1221 finds that intense fighting broke out in southern Sudan region. The common cause previous patches and loss and node further destabilizing the region. They have no evidence specific to planned tension. Second, turn at the AU diplomacy solved violence. ICGO 6 finds the dispute over Somaliland status is likely to become an ever-increasing source of friction involving serious danger of violent conflict. In the absence of a negotiated separation, the relationship between the two neighbors could potentially become a border war. On FDI, you can turn to FDI boosts the economy. Adegoye et al. 20 finds that FDI tends to increase capital accumulation, boost local businesses' productivity by contracting and exposing them to healthy competition, technological transition, and human capital increase, which means there's no conflict because people are leaving poverty, so they're less likely to go to war, and you prefer it because historical analysis where their evidence is speculative. FDI goes to companies, not the clans and government structure. They can't name you a single policy that in Crossfire that would actually ban this. On the impact, their important evidence about the status quo and concedes fighting now. On terror, first, Al-Shabaab is strong now. Robinson 24 finds that Al-Shabaab is stronger than generally perceived and may be in a position to achieve significant large-scale success. Al-Shabaab has launched several very successful attacks on isolated bases, which you prefer because it's a month more recent. But even if you buy their evidence, it analyzes the time during which the MOU was present, proving that so whatever happened in Somaliland has no actual impact on the prevalence of terrorism. They concede and cross. There's no empirical basis for their link. But on their first link about the Soilu evidence saying that they would kick out troops, there's absolutely no reason why this is true. The reason it happened during the MOU is because Egypt was there to fill the vacuum when Somalia kicked Ethiopia out. But Somalia knows that Al-Shabaab is a threat to their state and it kills their citizens, meaning there's no reason why they would do this because it would ruin all possibilities of counterterrorism. Then on the argument about recruitment, their evidence is saying that this happens in the status quo. There's no reason why the affirmative is necessary for it to cause recruitment because all Al-Shabaab needs to do is be able to fearmonger and spread a message to the population that there is a threat that's sufficient to cause a rally around the flag effect. Nationalism doesn't have to be rooted in fact, which is why their evidence says they're increasing now. Are you good for calls?
Timer like 10 seconds.
Yeah, take that before.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you mind if I ask the first question?
Yeah.
So on like the first response on tariffs, like if we tell you that it is going to exacerbate like the Houthi crisis, right? Isn't that the internal link into nuclear war? I know you say like nuclear war is worse, but isn't y'all's internal link Houthi conflict? So if that's worsened, at that point, doesn't that like increase the risk of your internal link?
No. So what your evidence says isn't that we have like counterterrorism increases the actual conflict with the Houthis. It just says it exacerbates the humanitarian crisis in Yemen because there's more instability there. Our argument is that the affirmative is necessary to prevent Trump from pushing the red button, and that if you care about the people in Yemen, the worst thing for them is dying in a nuclear war. Also a question. So let's talk about this argument on. Okay, let's talk about this argument on terror. Does Somalia support Al-Shabaab or no?
Well, like the Somalian government doesn't necessarily like support any certain groups, that it's not necessarily, we'd say like Al-Shabaab is currently at an all-time low in Somalia right now.
Okay.
That's what
Wait, why is it at an all-time low in Somalia right now?
we'd say like current mediation efforts are working with the AU,
Okay.
but we would say.
So
like,
the government of Somalia is working to minimize the threat of Al-Shabaab right
I'd say it's like more the AU going like directly into Somalia. The Somalian government doesn't have like a ton of autonomy with the way it operates within Somalia to like actually get anything done, but it's more just like African Union.
Okay.
Do you like what's the bright line for this nuclear war?
now. On which convention?
On y'all's on the C1 with Yemen or the
Oh.
Houthis.
On the contention one, we just say that whenever there's like the next like massive increase in strikes from the Houthis, that's enough to cause Trump to escalate, especially if he feels that he doesn't have a base. And the recent evidence says that the base in Djibouti is currently getting incredibly overloaded because everything has to go through that Djibouti.
Do you know if I have a follow up with the
Yeah, sure.
Djibouti thing? So like with that, you just tell them like the Djibouti port is clogged, right? It's not very good. But then on the C1, you guys tell us that like they already have access to a port in Djibouti, but insofar as that port like isn't efficient, like at that point, why does that matter?
Yeah, that's exactly our argument, is that because Trump knows that his one base isn't actually effective at countering the Houthis, that's why he wants to build another base. We say it's base or just maybe. I'll get a question though. Okay, so back on this argument about terrorism, if I could just follow up there. So in terms of these like AU negotiations, is the government of Somalia a willing party in those negotiations?
Yeah.
Cool, you can have a question.
All right. So let's like back to our terror argument.
Yeah.
So you guys say like Al-Shabaab is strong right now. Is there any indication that Al-Shabaab wants to launch like a big attack that you say triggers your internal link?
Well, we don't read an impact to Al-Shabaab, that's more.
Or sorry.
scenario.
Well, the question I mean is like, is there? I said the wrong name. Is there any indication that the Houthis are going to launch like a big attack?
Oh, yeah, our Larison evidence says that currently there's been a dramatic increase in the amount of ships.
And I'll take reference right now. Okay.
225.
All right, it is going to go affirmative negative. All right, my time, is anybody not ready? My time will begin. Now, remember the Popeye's 23 turn, the Luke reached the top of rebuttal, increased international interference, get through these exacerbates Yemeni humanitarian crisis. They say there's no implication because nuclear war is worse for Yemen, but the internal link triggers for nuclear war faster and at a higher risk if Houthi terror is worsened. Remember, Borgia 24, the Western reluctance to directly confront the Houthis, leave the threat to global security unresolved. They say we already have an access point to Djibouti, but the port is clogged and bad. That's why Ethiopia wants the Somaliland port, and that's why we see issues rise. Then Robbins 24, Somaliland defense doesn't solve. Houthi issues will persist as long as Iranian support continues. They say we can see Trump. You know that Trump hasn't pushed the red button on any other similar issues during either term. Why is this one unique? They don't actually warrant that. In the turn LB24, that in Berman positions Al-Shabaab as the defenders of Somalia and empowers terror. They say it's about the MOU, so it's not unique. They don't warrant to you how the MOU makes it not unique. You know the MOU is different from global recognition that opens the floodgates, and there was on 23. It's maritime terror. Al-Shabaab will recruit more after recognition. But go with their C2 of regional stability. Remember the turn stat at 18. The app deepens tensions. They say the AU will compel Somalia to negotiate. The card says the AU has the option to negotiate or take a hardline stance, and we see the negative that. The Brahmi 24, the new president is less destabilizing recognition efforts. You know that they just, regardless of what they say about deals, it's going to be less stabilizing either way. But then go to their second about AU legitimacy. The Diversity 24 evidence is really clear when it tells you the app destroys legitimacy. In the turn, their evidence is wrong. Hassan 21 tells you Somaliland is not legally justified. That turns the absence recognition is legally bankrupt, which destroys AU credibility. They say the population is nomadic within the borders. There's no evidence that every single nomadic person is fully within the borders. Go to our side of the flow. On civil war, they say that fights happen now. It's not on a national scale. They say the turn that AU diplomacy solves violence, maybe on an international level, but not within Somaliland. You know the AU interference would spark civil war through contrasting clan dynamics. That's Batten 22. In the turn, the FBI boosts the economy. Say 23 tells you that affirming brings FBI and causes inequality-driven conflict through clan corruption. There is conflict. It's only going to elite businesses. They don't actually prove that it's going to go to every single person equally and fairly. It's the clan-driven tensions that are the problem. Then on terror, they say Al-Shabaab is strong now. It's still at an all-time low because of current mediation through the AU. They say our evidence analyzes while the MOU is still, or the MOU is still in there, but saw you evidence from this December. They say peacekeeping only happened with Egypt there. Again, the evidence is from last month. Current mediation ensures peacekeeping remains. They say recruitment happens in the SWO, not to the extent that it would in their world, because Williams 24 tells you that affirming breeds terror recruitment on another level. Extend our case, you know that affirming ensures inter-clan conflict because ISIS have power in Somaliland and four other clans oppose because they feel military and financial aid will give the clan power to take control. All it takes is a few guns to start conflict, and you know that Somaliland lacks internal legitimacy, meaning that any attempt to become a state fails. You know the impact of civil war because clan infighting increases the stability of the region and increases opportunities for terrorists. And you know in our C2, there's been a 60% decrease in Al-Shabaab attacks. That's due to joint co-op offers. The dispute's delayed 20,000 African Union military force within threats Al-Shabaab resistance. And you know, granted independence, Somali government demanded all Ethiopian troops leave. That's how we access nuclear war in the C2 for those reasons.
We have 2 minutes and we took 20 seconds, so it's 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Yeah. Great, it's gonna briefly start on our contention one, our contention two, Wayne, not their case. Is anyone not right? You're not gonna sign your ballot on our contention one of terrorism, but on the first turn, they have considered that's completely non-unique. Their own evidence concedes other actors like Saudi Arabia are doing this conflict, meaning that has absolutely no impact. Secondly, they don't read an internal link into this causing extinction, which we would say is the most important part of this debate, so they don't internalize an impact. But then, on contention two, regional stability, this was your signed about for us. It's try or die for the affirmative. In the last speech, they can see the El Mawani evidence that says tensions like Ethiopia and Egypt are inevitably going to go to war, which means that the negative world is absolutely not safe. You always have to vote affirmative to just stop this. But we're going for our first link. It tells you we're going for our argument about AU legitimacy. When you can do the affirmative, it means that you solve one of the root causes of regional tensions within the Horn of Africa. That's the evidence. And right now, Staker tells you that the AU lacks legitimacy to solve conflicts because it seems like it's not acting to intervene against anything preemptively to, and therefore conflict is just spiraling. However, the AU is the best actor to resolve such conflicts because of the fact that it seems impartial. Or else a war could spiral into a regional war that would draw in actors because they care about trade and their military bases in the region. This would go to a nuclear war, declare a great power war causes extinction for start. Then they give you a couple responses. Firstly, that the new president is more hardline. However, the evidence literally concedes that the new president wants recognition. So obviously, Somaliland is going to strive for recognition. This non-unique circumvention one because it means that conflict is inevitable anyways. But then on the other argument that it's not legally justified. Firstly, they don't actually explain why it's not legally justified. Secondly, we would say that it only matters if it's justified for the AU. In 2005, they said that per their standards, Somaliland should absolutely be recognized, and they never acted on it, which has undermined their credibility in the long term. Member states don't have faith, and that's the key thing to allow for credibility to happen. And this isn't true because they recognize Eritrea. That should have declared legitimacy. But then, also, we would say that there's absolutely no backlash here. They have conceded the Schwartz evidence on our contention too that tells you that there'd be no backlash because the AU can bring Somaliland and Somalia to the table to discuss security negotiations, meaning that all of their links on contention one and contention two that rely on backlash are not happening because of the Schwartz concession. You prefer arguments on my prerequisite to theirs because the AU is best at solving terrorism and allowing for cooperation in the long term, and when it has greater legitimacy, it means that there's less likelihood of backlash, and it means with legitimacy they can resolve a civil war. But then, go into their case. On contention one, they have not responded to the fact that there's currently fighting right now. They say it's about national tensions. However, if there's fighting right now, then there's absolutely no delineation of what the bright line is and to their impact to you. They can't go for it. But even then, the ICG evidence is conceded that tells you that there'd be negotiations in the affirmative world because Puntland, Somaliland, all these clans could come to the table. Then, on the argument about corruption, they have not responded to the fact that it goes into private businesses that allow for people to be more productive and innovate. They gave you a reason to crossfire for why other clans, besides the predominant clan, can't get the investment. If they're a good business, they'll always get it. Then I'll continue to do about terrorism. The concession that there's 60% evidence about terrorism decreasing is during the MOU loses on the ground and tells you that they have absolutely no probability because the MOU should have triggered an increase in terrorism and it absolutely didn't. But even then, on the recruitment argument, they can see that they can just extrapolate to anything. So Al-Shabaab will always allow for recruitment to happen. They can just spin things out of control. They don't need the affirmative to do so. Thus, we proudly affirm.
So, sorry. You guys mentioned like Eritrea should have caused the same backlash. Why? Like if they met those four things that we mentioned that Somalia actively doesn't or Somaliland actively doesn't, why should Eritrea have caused that?
Sure, because Eritrea and Ethiopia have disputed borders. Ethiopia wouldn't necessarily agree to Eritrea's secession and like recognition. However, when they recognize them because they believe that they did warrant statehood, that didn't cause like credibility to fall apart. So either it proves that precedent doesn't really matter. So only our first link is linked to legitimacy, or precedent is ruined right now, and the affix is that.
Don't have a question.
So I just want a little bit more clarity about your C2. The 60% evidence was taken from last year until this fall, all of which was during like the implementation of the MOU with Ethiopia's potential recognition of Somaliland. So why did the tax decrease 60%?
Because of the joint cooperation efforts involved.
So
doesn't that prove then that like stance on Somaliland isn't the like variable that dictates whether or not terrorism increases or decreases?
Well, the cooperation efforts would increase confidence.
You're telling me the act disrupts these like negotiation efforts from ever happening.
Wait, but the time frame that your evidence looks at is initially when the MOU was implemented, when there were absolutely no negotiations, no agreement on anything, and finds that across the period that it was implemented prior to negotiations, which began in December, terrorism was decreasing.
Yeah, and we
So-
tell you that affirming directly reverses that progress.
Sure, but that just proves that regardless of country's posture on Somaliland, it doesn't change terrorism.
But the evidence still indicates that the reason that we've seen like in the past year or so, like an actual decrease is because of these like negotiation efforts, because you saw like backlash when Ethiopia signed the deal in the Florida.
Sure.
whatever
So
it
you
was.
agree that negotiations resolve terrorism?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, wait, I thought you said you could have, I thought you were talking to Zoe. I'm sorry. Okay, let's talk, okay, back onto our side of the play. So when we're talking about our, when we're talking about tariffs, right? So, or specifically on the, on the recruitment part. So insofar as like recruitment is happening in the status quo, what is like, to what extent is this recruitment happening?
Well, we can say for your own argument, recruitment can happen regardless, and also not able to extrapolate anything, then they can just spin anything into recruitment method. They can say, oh, look at Egypt's doing all this stuff, like in the Nile, like that's bad for Somalia, et cetera, et cetera. They can do anything to justify like recruitment methods.
Start, we have 15 seconds. You're not ready. Starting on the next side of the flow, and then hopefully some weight between the ass side of the flow. Start the time first. Aguilar 24 tells us that tensions in Somaliland have fallen and de-escalated and peace is on the way. It's a really great status quo. But what happens is in the affirmative world, the AU is always going to set a precedent for national recognition. But Baden tells us that this is going to spark civil war by increasing the contrast in clan dynamics, which is always going to be damning. When Saeed 23 tells us that affirming it brings FBI and causes inequality-driven conflict through this clan corruption. So at that point, the link is really, really clear, but they're going to give us a few responses. They first told us that AU diplomacy solves violence. We would say, one, we're going to extend the terms that they're going to deck AU legitimacy, which means you can never see AU diplomacy actually solve. But two, Audrey tells you that AU diplomacy might work on an international level, but we know it doesn't work within Somaliland insofar as Batten 22 tells us that it always exacerbates existing clan dynamics. But also Saeed 23 is really, really clear, but they're going to get up here again and tell us that like FDI boosts the economy, but insofar as our Saeed evidence is very specific to Somaliland, telling you that in Somaliland, bringing FDI causes inequality-driven conflict specifically because of the clan corruption. But they're going to get up here and tell you that it should just go to every business because the good businesses are going to grow. And insofar as you know that you see corruption, meaning this money never actually goes to the right place, that means you never see actually solvency, and you actually see these problems exacerbated by widening the gap. At that point, the easiest place for you to vote is on our impact about civil war, as Horton 23 told us, Somaliland civil war called its mass death and displacement, and that's the biggest scope in the round. But let's talk about regional stability. Right now, Dalmore 24 tells us really clearly that the new president is following less destabilizing recognition efforts. Even if they want independence, you know that they're actively moving away towards anything that's going to be destabilizing. We would also say extend the ground law 24 as it tells you the after destroyed legitimacy through a secession domino effect, which means you always see AU legitimacy debt in their world, which is a complete cut into their internal link. But they tell us like we don't give any reason as to why Somaliland isn't going to be a legal country. We give you 4 and they're really cleanly extended. But either way, at that point, you know, there's 2 warrants as to why AU legitimacy is always dead, meaning the AU can never solve for anything. When legitimacy is dead, at that point, the cleanest impact in the round is the worst.
It's gonna start on, our case weighing their case. Is anyone already? Awesome. They have conceded it's try or die, even if there is a 1% risk that our link is able to solve for extinction. You know you have to, because extinction is inevitable in the status quo. They have agreed that Egypt, Ethiopia, and multiple other countries in the Horn of Africa will inevitably go to war over tensions. And they have conceded that Somaliland is the root cause. Right now, no countries trust the African Union because they have failed to take a unified stance on Somaliland. But our evidence says that in the affirmative, because they take action, countries trust them, meaning that they use that as a forum to resolve disputes, because the African Union is impartial. They have regional knowledge. Otherwise, war causes drawn because of trade and bases going nuclear and causing extinction. They just tell you that the current president won't be destabilizing, but they don't explain why this matters for the debate. They've agreed that their own evidence says they want recognition and will pursue it. Then they said there's a secession domino effect. First of all, this was not present in their summary. Second, they did not engage with my frontline rebuttal, which is that because Somaliland is a peaceful country that didn't violently secede, even if it sets a model, it's a positive one, so there's no reason why this would be bad. Then they say that it violates international law, but they have conceded that the African Union itself said in 2005 that they should vote in order to recognize Somaliland, which means that none of their evidence is actually specific to our scenario. The actor we are analyzing found that it had to happen, which is why there's a decrease in precedence right now. On the weighing debate, they don't do any weighing, which means you always prefer us. They have agreed that when the African Union has more legitimacy, states use that as a forum to mediate their disputes, which means that they're able to resolve civil war. The ICG evidence specifically says they have the potential to work with the clans in Somaliland in order to resolve tensions, which means that they don't get their impact. But then on their case, the uniqueness is conceded. They haven't answered our evidence from December, which says that currently fighting is breaking out in multiple regions across Somaliland between clans, which means there's absolutely no bright line as to what triggers their conflict. We would say it's try or die for the African Union. Then on this FDI evidence, they have never actually warranted this. Remember that FDI doesn't go to the government, it goes to specific private businesses, and they can't explain to you why only those private businesses are run by one specific plan, insofar as if you're a successful business, that is sufficient to attract investment. There's no reason why this exacerbates dynamics, but plan dynamics are causing war right now.
Good round.
Good round. Thank you for judging.
Thank you.